Gentlemen, start your engines!
In the winter of '93, a stranger rode into town. On the 4th of January, Nigel Mansell, the 1992 Formula One World Drivers' Champion, arrived in Arizona to test an Indycar for the first time for his new team. The 1.6-mile road course at the Firebird International Raceway in the desert on the outskirts of Phoenix would be the site of Mansell's first encounter with America's most sophisticated form of motorsport. It was a happy and relaxed Mansell who took the wheel of a Cadillac and was soon putting the car through its paces as he completed his first exploratory laps of the circuit.
Well, he's, everything I thought he'd be. I mean, he's a world champion, and he's got a lot of experience. He understands the race cars, and, you can just tell immediately by his technique on the racetrack and the way he feels things and his comments that he's really a professional, and, I'm really pleased and anxious to get on with the season.
Among the visitors at Firebird was Nigel's great friend, champion golfer Greg Norman, giving some moral support.
When I picked him up this morning, he was very nervous, very apprehensive about coming out here for his first drive, and that's great to see. And any time you get to see a world-class athlete who is great in his profession get nervous about doing something, that means he's excited. And it's as excited I've seen Nigel for a long, long time, and I think that's great. I think it's great for IndyCar racing. I think it's great for motorsport right throughout the world. I know what his goals are. I know he wants to leave the world champion in Formula One and end up the #1 driver in IndyCar at the end of the year. If he has those desires and he has the car and he goes on and does it, I'd be proud for him to do it. But I think in 6 months' time, we're probably all going to turn around and say, yeah, we were right.
A 1992 Lola would give Nigel his first taste of turbocharged race engine power since 1987. The world champion looked pensive as the car was warmed up. But as ever, good humour was never far below the surface. As the engineers completed their last systems checks, Nigel made his own preparations. Amid an air of great expectation, Nigel climbed into the cockpit.
I'm sorry? Hey, Jim. Oh, Jerry. The hat chunk? Oh.
After a few final adjustments, Mansell took to the track. Settled into the car, initial caution gave way to natural speed. The back straight of the circuit ran parallel to the freeway, giving some truck drivers a rare opportunity to race the reigning world champion. Later, Nigel did his famous spin test to get the feel of the Lola. It may have appeared to be just for fun, but it was important for him to know how the car would handle in an extreme situation. It was a crowd pleaser too. After a few more laps, Nigel came in and, under the watchful eye of Greg Norman, his first debrief in Indycar racing began. What did the team think of his antics?
I've been in IndyCar racing for about 32 years and I've never seen a spin test, so that was very unique, but I can see his point, and you know, it was well done, and it was something that I'm going to remember for a while.
Mansell was eager to get back on the track. As his confidence in the car grew and he got used to a racing car with a manual gearbox again, so the lap times fell. After just 35 laps of testing, there was excitement on the part of both the team and its new driver as he smashed the lap record by 1/10 of a second.
It's pretty sensational. I'm really happy and content, because to beat the official track record here first time out, and only 35 laps in the car and at the circuit is, well, I'm real excited about it.
To have gone as quickly as he has is impressive. It's really quite brilliant. So we're very impressed.
It's very different to a Formula One car. It's much heavier to drive. It's a little bit slower to accelerate, but it's harder to stop because of the weight of it. And you have to brake a little bit earlier, and you have to be a bit more precise in some of the corners. Because with a Formula One car, if you get out of shape, you can get it back quickly because it reacts so much quicker. But this car, if you're not as precise as you know you want to be and where you want to be on the circuit, you can't get it back. So from that aspect, it's more difficult.
The cars are heavier, of course, and less nimble than F1 cars, but it's just astonishing how quickly he's taken to it, and it's all up there, as well as the physical skill needed to drive it. Then he's obviously a very intelligent guy.
You know, it's the terminology. I mean, listening to them on the radio, everything's 10-4, this, that and the other, and I keep joking, it's 10-4 already, you know, things like this. You know, I mean, the terminology is very, very different, and it's going to take probably 2 or 3 tests to sort of get up to speed with each other, but I'm very confident and very happy. They're extremely happy, relaxed, and I think we're all looking forward to having a great year together.
There's quite a bit more camaraderie. It's not as cutthroat. Once they get out on the racetrack, it's very competitive, but I don't think it's quite as intense as Formula One tends to get. So I think he's really going to enjoy it, and I know they're welcoming him with open arms. This is really good for the sport.
I could tell by the way he was driving the car in the corner, and he's so smooth that he just looked fast, and I wasn't surprised that he'd break the record. But we're looking forward to not only finishing up here, but then going to the oval, because I think on the ovals he's going to really take to those too.
Oval tracks are unique to the Indycar series and have been an intrinsic part of American motorsport from its beginnings. But Indycar racing isn't just about turning left at high speed. The championship also includes races on street circuits, such as Long Beach in California, and permanent road courses like Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, types of track familiar to followers of Formula One and other types of European racing. Perhaps the greatest challenge is presented by the daunting super speedways like Indianapolis and Michigan. Long oval courses, average lap speeds of over 220 miles an hour are not unusual. Apart from the tracks, Indycar racing differs from Grand Prix racing in many other ways. In the next hour, you can discover why and how pace cars are used, how races can be won and lost in the pits, and with the help of Nigel and the Newman-Haas team, find out the differences between an Indy car and a Formula One car. The first American National Racing Championship, organised by the American Automobile Association, was held in 1909. In those pioneering years, races were held on loose surface road circuits and oval dirt tracks. By the 1920s, the rough road circuits were replaced by races on board speedways. But the Wall Street crash in 1929 brought about the demise of the wooden tracks. The Depression also caused manufacturer interest in racing to dwindle, bringing about a rise to prominence by specialist builders. Most notable was Harry Miller, a dominant force in the 1920s and 30s. Miller's engine designs, later developed by Fred Offenhauser and Dale Drake, continued to win races until the 1970s. The post-war years saw the development of the classic roadster Indycar. Heavyweight, 400 horsepower, front-engined cars, which would dominate the national championship for almost 20 years. The disaster at the 1955 Le Mans 24-hour race, in which over 80 spectators were killed, caused the American Automobile Association to abandon its racing activities. From 1956, the United States Automobile Club, USAC, took over the organisation of the national championship. In the 1950s, more paved ovals began to appear, and in 1957, the Indy cars made their first visit to Europe, when a 500-mile event was held on the steeply banked track at Monza in Italy. By the late 1950s, lightweight rear-engine cars had begun to win the Formula One races, while the front-engine roadsters remained dominant in America. But a great change was coming. In 1961, Cooper, the reigning Grand Prix champions, brought an adapted version of their Formula One car to the Indianapolis 500 and caused a sensation by finishing 9th overall. Over the next 3 years, the USAC establishment, with its roadster tradition, fought a fierce rearguard action against the European invaders and their funny little cars. The fate of the roadsters was sealed in 1965, when Jim Clark, driving a Lotus, won the Indianapolis 500. The victory was the first by a rear-engined car and also the first by a non-American driver for nearly 50 years. Graham Hill's Indianapolis victory the following year would be the last by a foreign driver for over 20 years. The 1960s was also a time of technical experimentation. Gas turbine-powered cars came very close to winning at Indianapolis in 1967 and 68 before new rules effectively outlawed such engines. Aerofoils began to appear on Indycars in 1969 and soon reached outrageous proportions before regulations to curb rapidly increasing lap speeds were introduced, trimming wings to dimensions comparable with those of Formula One cars. Dirt track races were phased out of the championship in 1970, since when races have been held exclusively on paved ovals, road courses and street circuits. In the 1970s, race-winning designs were produced by American constructors such as Eagle, Parnelli and Coyote, while European interests were represented by British builders Lola and McLaren. In 1975, Cosworth Engineering produced a turbocharged version of its famous Ford DFV Grand Prix engine for Indycar racing, which became the dominant power unit of the following decade. In 1978, the Indycars made their first, and so far only, visit to Britain when races were held at Silverstone and Brands Hatch. 1979 saw a major change in the organisation of the IndyCar series when an association of team owners, the Championship Auto Race Teams, or CART, took over from USAC. In the same year, ground effect aerodynamics, originally developed in Europe by Colin Chapman and the Lotus Grand Prix team, were introduced to IndyCar racing on the John Barnard-designed Chaparral. The 1980s witnessed the rise to dominance of the Chevrolet engine, designed and built by the British Ilmor Company, overthrowing the Ford Cosworth engine. As the decade progressed, increasing costs of car design and development put the self-build option beyond the means of most teams. As a result, IndyCar racing has, with the notable exception of the Penske team, which has built its own cars since the late 1970s, become largely a customer car formula. Initially, the market was dominated by the British company March Engineering, but in recent years another British company, Lola Cars, have become the main car supplier in IndyCar racing. In 1993, apart from Penske, who will also supply a small number of customers, and the Ray Hall Hogan team, which has taken over the True Sports project, all the IndyCar teams will use the Lola chassis, while a new Ford Cosworth engine will challenge the supremacy of the Ilmor Chevrolet in the engine war. The Newman-Haas racing team was formed for the 1983 IndyCar Championship Series. Partners Paul Newman, the Hollywood film actor, and Carl Haas, a dealer in racing cars since the 1950s, had been rival team owners in the Can-Am Sports Car Championship Series for several years before joining forces. Both men had raced themselves, Haas in American national sports car events in the 50s, while Newman competed impressively in Trans Am touring car events in America until the mid-1980s. But his most publicised achievement was a second-place finish in the Le Mans 24-hour race in 1979. Newman also won the Indianapolis 500, although this was when he was playing the leading role in the 1969 movie Winning. Carl Haas became the North American agent for Lola Cars in 1968 and has run a factory-supported team for the constructor each year since then. Initially, the Haas Lolas ran in the original Can-Am series until its demise in 1974. The team then became front-runners in the Formula 5000 single-seater category until it was replaced by a revived Can-Am championship, which the Haas team won 4 years running from 1977 to 1980. For the move into IndyCars in 1983, Newman-Haas ran a new Lola, the company's first IndyCar design since 1978. Multiple national champion Mario Andretti was signed up as the driver, and the following year the team won the Indycar Championship. In 1986, Haas moved into Grand Prix racing, but a major sponsor pulled out within weeks of the team entering Formula One, and the project was abandoned after less than a year. For 1989, the Newman-Haas outfit was expanded to 2 cars when Mario's son Michael joined the team. In a kart record-breaking year in 1991, the young Andretti won 8 races and scored 234 points in the championship to secure his first IndyCar crown. A hard-fought defence of the title in 1992 saw Michael lose out by just 4 points after the final race of the series to Bobby Rahal. In August of 1992, the McLaren Grand Prix team announced that it had signed Michael Andretti as one of its drivers for 1993. A few weeks later, the news broke that Nigel Mansell had agreed terms with Newman-Haas to race in the 1993 PPG IndyCar World Series. Winter in the Arizona desert can usually be relied on for perfect conditions for testing. Nigel's first encounter with an oval track came during a period of wildly unpredictable weather. Although floodwaters lay around the grounds of the Phoenix International Raceway, the track itself was unaffected. While the Lola was prepared for his use, Nigel renewed an old acquaintance with his former Lotus Grand Prix teammate, Mario Andretti.
I've known Nigel before. Obviously, circumstances now are different because we are teammates officially, and I'm quite happy. I think things should work out very well between us. He's come a long way, obviously, and accomplished a great deal. I mean, the level of his driving is right now is the very best, so he should have no problem here, that's for sure.
Also at Phoenix was 1992 IndyCar champion Bobby Rahal.
I think everybody's very pleased. We're very proud of our series. We think that we think Michael's going to represent us well in Formula One, and having him there and Nigel come here, I think it's going to be a big plus for us all. The more the merrier as far as we're concerned. Obviously, he's a very good driver. There's no question in my mind that he will learn it. It's just a matter of how quickly. And as I say, I think the team will go a long way towards helping that. In this form of racing, particularly the ovals, the setup of the car is so crucial, and it takes time to develop a feel for what it wants. And of course, they know what the setups are generally going to be, so that's going to really quicken things for him. But obviously, he's a very, very good driver.
As the team adjusted the new car to Nigel's personal specifications, team owners Paul Newman and Carl Haas arrived on the scene to witness their man in action. Nigel's preparations for the challenge ahead were closely watched by his new benefactors. The media men barely knew which way to point their cameras. Satisfied that all was in order, Newman and Haas moved aside to await the action on the track, leaving Nigel to concentrate on the job in hand. As at Firebird, excitement and anticipation hung in the air as Mansell ventured out onto the circuit. Nigel took a few laps to play himself into the unfamiliar surroundings of a track that was completely new to him. As the test continued, the lap speed soared. Soon, the Lola was was just a white blur as it passed the pits, and Mansell was lapping within half a second of the circuit record. The team were impressed. Sadly, rain prevented further running. But at the end of the first day, there was appreciative applause and a tribute, as well as a handshake from a delighted team owner. Was he surprised by his new driver?
Impressive. Well, it's really hard to explain. You expect him to surprise you. I mean, that's what you always expect of excellence. So when he surprises you, it's no surprise, because you expect to be surprised. Does that make any sense?
None whatsoever, but it's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
If you don't expect anything from anything, then everything is a surprise to you. But if you expect to be surprised because he does really represent excellence, then it is, in fact, no surprise because you expected to be. Well, it's an interesting riddle. I'll take it home with it and work with it for a while. It's brought a lot of international excitement already. I mean, I can't think of a test session that's been this widely exposed to the media since I've been racing, certainly, and I think that can only benefit the sport. I don't know. It's very hard to be competitive if you're an actor. I mean, in the first place, the rules are so different for each judge. Each critic has a different criteria on which they base somebody's performance. This one did a little bit better over here. Racing is very clean. You come across the finish line, he's first, he's second, he's third, and it's very well defined. So if you're competitive and you're an actor, then you got to find some other outlet for it. And this has been very good for me.
And what were Nigel's impressions of his new team owner?
He's a fantastic man in his own right, a great star, unbelievable character, and the warmth and the charisma he carries as a human being is tremendous. And
he does have a genuine passion for the sport.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in his own right, he's a tremendous car driver, and he knows the business very, very well, and I think Carl Haas and Paul together are a great team.
What had impressed Nigel most about his first run on an oval?
Basically, an unbelievable commitment you have to make to the corner. I mean, you go in at probably 190 and you come out at 170 something. You lose about 15 to 20 mile an hour in the corner. It's quite extraordinary to come down a straightaway and not lift when you're on the hot lap, and obviously the banking, because the banking's quite obviously cambered to pull you around, but it's the most extraordinary feeling, and a feeling I'm not used to yet, and that's why I've got very little comfort zone at the moment, but I'm very optimistic, because when that comfort zone comes and I get used to the oval and the car, then I know I can be able to go a bit quicker.
Prospects looked good for the second day, but overnight the weather changed.
This morning, residents of New River, north of Phoenix, watched in amazement as water threatened to top this bridge. Local authorities shut down traffic as a precaution. Rising floodwaters forced many people out of their homes in low-lying areas along New River.
The sun eventually came out, but high winds put paid to any testing. The unpainted 93 Lola was packed up for the long journey back to headquarters in Illinois, and the day became a media jamboree.
this is enjoyable, and you've got some great people, great sponsors, and some absolutely fabulous racing, and I'm just looking forward to doing it.
Let's have a closer look at Nigel's Indycar.
What we have in front of us now is my potential race car for the Indy World Series. If I can just walk you around it, I'll point out some fundamental differences that we have from a Formula One car. Straight away, I think what we'd like to do is start in the middle of the car and then we'll move forward. As you can see here, this is the main refueling tank, which depresses in there if I've got enough strength. And they basically put 28 to 38 gallons of fuel in there, depending on when you pit stop, of course, and it's all gravity fed. Through here, you have a breather on the other side. Yeah, this is an important part here. This is the air jack, and obviously it plugs in here, lifts the car up. You've got to be very careful to keep your feet out of the way. Normally when we're in the pits, Kenny, who does it, will actually say, coming down, and you've got to make sure you're out of the way. Mainly because this car is another 500 pounds heavier than a Formula One car. Formula One car, if it's down to the weight limit, is about 500 kilograms. These, they weigh in at 720 kilograms. Moving across to the front now, some other vital bits of equipment on this car, which is very different to a Formula One. Bearing in mind that this car now is prepared for an oval circuit. This is an incredible headrest, which is very, very firm indeed. And then this fuel meter here is very, very important. I'm just about to zero it for you. You've got 44.9 there now, and you zero it. Every time you come into the pit, you have to zero it, and then you have an actual sticker which will come on here for the race, which will actually show you when you have to pit if there's no yellow flags. Goes without saying, if there's yellow flags, the team manager will actually call you in if he thinks there's a window to come in, which might be better to actually sort of try and win the race and try and sort of do a bit of trickery. Again, on the steering wheel, very, very important piece of equipment here. Obviously the radio, and radio is very important for IndyCar racing, far more than Formula One, because of the yellow flag situation again. This little trick device, obviously it's only a switch here, but this switch, if you push it to the left, will actually jack the rear right height of the car up, which will basically put cross weight into the car. Equally, if you push it to my right, the other way, it will jack it down. What that does, if you've got an oversteering car, you have a possibility of upwards of 50 pounds cross weight in the car to adjust it yourself while you're running. And on an oval, this little piece of equipment is very, very important. Okay, well, we're just about to show you the thing that's given me probably the biggest consternation of the last 4 years, which of course is the gear lever. I haven't had one in the Williams for a few years, and this is the magic device, which all cars have, and you just got to get used to it again. That knob is the actual knob I used when last time I used to change gear in 86, 87 and 88. So a little bit of nostalgia there. It's the actual same knob that I won quite a few races with the Williams team. This little knob here is for the brakes, anti-clockwise instead of clockwise to go to the front. Okay, the roll bar here, you push in and to the front to go soft, and the rear roll bar is set in the soft position already. You have to push it in and pull it back. Very difficult to do it when the car is standing still, especially when it's all preloaded. So, but those are the two roll bars which can alter the settings of the car. Well, along the front, what I'd like to show you is the suspension. The one thing that you can see, especially on an oval, is how strong everything is. Everything's very, very solid, and of course it has to be because of the G-force that you're actually pulling. The Lola car especially is, I think, and has been for the last couple of years, the best car to have in IndyCar racing, and I'm very, very comfortable to be driving this Lola this year. Just moving around now to the front, the other fundamental things that we have is the front wing. And we have the availability that when we make a pit stop, we can actually adjust the front wing. So if we have an understeering car or an oversteering car aerodynamically, we have the literally the facility to either turn this in or turn it out. If we've got too much oversteer, then obviously we'll lower this wing just a little bit, 1 or 2 turns. And equally, if we've got too much understeer, then we'll bring this flap up and give the car a little bit more downforce at the front. Okay, moving back now towards the second half of the car, there's some quite significant differences. Straight away you say, well, what on earth is this thing here? Well, this thing can make a difference if you're winning or losing a race. This is the blow-off valve. This is the valve that regulates the boost to the engine. Yeah, I mean, obviously it goes without saying that the single biggest difference between Formula One engine-wise and Indycar is the engine, which is turbocharged. This develops probably a little bit more power than the aspirated engine, and certainly a little bit more torque. You don't feel it too much more because of the weight of the car on acceleration, deceleration. Moving on here, we have the turbocharger housed just in here. We have the wastegate system, and you probably say, well, why is all the exhaust enclosed here? And we have air blowing in here and out through the back end. Basically, we try and protect everything within the car because this can get well over 1,000 degrees C. So they house it, and the most important thing on one of these cars, especially on an oval, if one of these pipes come off or just leak, that can cause a major, major accident. Moving to the back of the car completely now, you can see the major difference between an F1 and IndyCar is that the underneath of the car finishes at the axle. As you know, with a Formula One car, the underwing of the car will actually come back almost to the back wishbone or right back to the end of the gearbox. The exhaust system, the wastegate, and the actual bodywork, the underneath of the car, finishes at the center line of the axle here. Okay, as you can see, the camera is now showing you the total underneath of the car. The reason for that is that in a Formula One car, it's a completely flat-bottomed car. Now, in an IndyCar series, the cars are allowed to have an underwing, and that's how we generate the downforce. So that's going back to, if you like, the ground effect days of Formula One without the sliding skirts. The underneath of the car generates an awful lot of download. Okay, the incredible thing is with an IndyCar as opposed to a Formula One car is that before you get into an IndyCar at a race meeting on an oval, you think that it's been in an accident already. I mean, if you can see, the whole thing is tilted. If I just move out the way here, can you see? The whole thing is preloaded to the left. And that makes it difficult for two reasons. One, the car's always turning left, which going into the left-hand turns is sort of fairly important. But the problem is, as you come out the turn, to go straight, you must exert a lot of force in the opposite direction to keep the car going in a straight line. The other important thing is how much you preload the left side to the right side, the springs you carry on the right side to the left also, and the cambers that are on the car. It is quite phenomenal, it really is.
Like their Formula One counterparts, the construction of Indy cars is regulated by strict rules concerning structural strength and crash resistance. They may appear similar, but Indy cars are heavier due mainly to the strength of construction, which enables them to withstand high-speed impacts on ovals and super speedways. Incredibly, the wall came off worst in this accident. The driver escaped unharmed. Only manual gearboxes are allowed. Formula One type automated gear changes and traction control devices are not permitted. Indy cars use steel brake discs on road and street circuits and short ovals. Carbon discs can only be used for the 500-mile super speedway races. Suspension systems on Indy cars are similar to those used in Formula One, but active suspension and ride height adjusting systems are not allowed. Tyres are supplied exclusively by Goodyear. The wheel diameter is fixed at 15 inches, with the tyres typically 14 inches wide at the rear and 10 inches wide at the front. And 7 sets are allowed for a 200-mile race weekend, increasing to 11 sets for a 500-mile event. On short ovals, road courses and street circuits, the cars run with Formula One type high downforce wings. On super speedways, narrow, low-drag wings are used. All IndyCar engines are turbocharged and are either purpose-built pure racing engines with a maximum capacity of 2650 cc or production-derived stock block engines with a maximum capacity of 3430 cc. The amount of turbocharger boost pressure allowed is different for each type of engine. Pure racing engines like the Cosworth Ford or Ilmore Chevrolet are allowed 45 inches of boost, while a stock block Buick can operate with 50 inches. Turbocharger boost is regulated by the blow-off or pop-off valve. This is a spring-loaded mechanism mounted on the inlet manifold of the engine, which is set to open and bleed off boost pressure if its preset limit is exceeded. In terms of engine power, the Indycar engine produces a maximum of around 800 brake horsepower against the 750 brake horsepower of the naturally aspirated Formula One engine. An Indycar is thus potentially faster in a straight line than its Formula One cousin, but because of its lower weight, a Formula One car is more nimble and therefore quicker round tight corners than the Indycar. A match race between an Indycar and a Formula One car would be a fascinating contest. Indycars run on methanol, a renewable source, non-fossil fuel made from waste materials, and is therefore considered to be environmentally friendlier than gasoline. The fuel capacity of an Indycar is 40 gallons, carried in a puncture-resistant fuel cell contained between the cockpit and the engine. A fuel allowance is calculated for each race on the basis of a 1.8 miles per gallon consumption rate. As there's no limit on the number of pit stops permitted during a race, a team can manage the fuel allowance as it sees fit. But due to the time lost stopping in the pits and restarting, the teams usually try to make as few stops as possible. A fast refueling stop late in the race, a splash and dash, is sometimes used as a tactical ploy by teams. Despite careful calculation, fuel strategies can go wrong, as Michael Andretti discovered at Elkhart Lake in 1989. Andretti seemed to have victory in the bag when Danny Sullivan made a splash and dash stop in the final laps of the race. Michael, having used his full allowance of fuel, was obliged to run to the finish without a final stop. As his tank ran dry on the last lap, he was passed by Sullivan. Andretti's crew could only watch in dismay as Sullivan won the race, and Michael was left stranded. Refueling is usually not a hazardous procedure, but on rare occasions something does go wrong. If a fuel fire does occur, methanol has a hidden danger. It burns invisibly. In this footage of Al Unser Jr.'s disastrous pit stop at Cleveland in 1990, thankfully no one was seriously injured. Unlike a petrol fire, water can be used to extinguish the burning methanol. IndyCar racing is statistically no more dangerous than any other type of motorsport. In the event of an accident, a dedicated rescue crew, which travels to each round of the IndyCar Championship, is usually on the scene within seconds, and sometimes even before the accident is over, as in the case of Emerson Fittipaldi at Michigan in 1991. High-speed accidents on ovals and superspeedways require specialist knowledge and expertise from the rescue crews. A travelling medical centre is present at each race, staffed by a permanent team of doctors with expert knowledge of the type of injuries that sadly do occur in motor racing. This travelling hospital is equipped with the latest technology, ensuring that the best possible care is on hand in the event of an accident. Despite Nigel Mansell's world champion driver status, he'll still be required to undergo a familiarization or rookie test at Indianapolis before he's allowed to attempt to qualify. On road and street courses, practice and qualifying sessions are free-for-all periods, as in Formula One, with grid positions determined by each competitor's fastest lap. A similar system applies to qualifying on ovals and superspeedways, although each driver qualifies alone on a clear track. Nigel's first experience of running on an oval in traffic will therefore come on the race day at Phoenix. Formula One races are started with the cars stationary on the grid. Indycar races have rolling starts, in which the field is led around a number of parade laps at speed by a pace car. When the grid formation is in order, the pace car pulls off into the pits, the cars pass under a waved green flag, and the race is underway. Various flag signals are used by race officials and track marshals to control the race. A blue flag with a diagonal orange stripe is waved at a car which is being overtaken or lapped by a faster car. A car that's shown the black flag along with its racing number is required to stop at the pits at the end of the next lap for consultation with race officials. A yellow flag is used to reduce the speed of the race in the event of a spin or an accident. No overtaking is allowed in an area where yellow flags are shown. Double yellow flags mean that the whole track is under caution, at which time a pace car will go out onto the track to regulate the race speed. At the end of a caution period, a green flag is shown to indicate that the track is again clear for racing. A red flag is shown to stop the race immediately due to unsafe conditions on the track. A white flag with a diagonal red stripe is shown if an emergency or service vehicle is on the track. The white flag is flown at the finish line to signify the start of the final lap of the race. The checkered flag marks the end of the race. During the race, only 6 team members are allowed over the wall to work on a car at a pit stop. 4 wheels can be changed and the fuel tank refilled in under 20 seconds. Adjustments for the car's handling can be made at pit stops by various means, such as altering wing settings or changing the stagger on the tyres. What is stagger? Newman Haas crew member Tim Dog Homburg explains.
Tires we use on an oval track, the right side tire is bigger than the left side tire, and it's a critical measurement. It really affects the handling of the car. We measure it with a tape measure. It's a special one. We measure the circumference, and the tape reads in diameter. And the difference in the tire we call stagger. On a 1 mile track such as Phoenix, it's 3/10 of an inch of stagger. And it really, you can change it a little bit, and it really affects the handling of the car, how it goes into the corner. So it's a very important trick that we use. On a road course, the tires are all equal, same size, because you're turning left and right. With the oval track, you're only constantly turning to the left. So the right side tires being bigger helps the car go around the corner.
Tactics can win races. As we saw earlier, the timing of pit stops can win or lose the race. The strategic use of caution periods can also give a driver an advantage. Pit stops made under a yellow cost less time than those made when the race is running at full speed. An example of good race strategy came in the Valvoline 200 at Phoenix in 1991. During a caution period early in the 200-lap race, Harry Lyondike stayed out on the track while his rivals took the opportunity to refuel. It was a decision that would win Lyondike the race, as he was able to complete the race after making just 2 pit stops, while the other leading runners were all obliged to make 3 stops. Lyondike's luck was in on the 66th lap, when in need of fuel, an accident caused a second caution period, allowing him to make his first pit stop without losing too much time. 2 laps from the end of the race, Danny Sullivan's Alfa Romeo engine blew, creating a final caution period in which Lyondike led the field under the checkered flag behind the pace car to take a cleverly thought-out victory. race finishers score points on the basis of 20 points for a win, 16 points for second place, 14 points for third, and the 12, 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 down to 12th place. Extra points are awarded to the fastest qualifier and to the driver who leads the most laps during the race. The winner of the Indianapolis 500, the richest single prize in motor racing, becomes an instant dollar millionaire. An American racing magazine publishes a list of millionaire drivers. In the 1993 listing, 6 of the top 10 were Indycar drivers, with Bobby Rahal leading his peers with career earnings of more than $11 million. Who will Nigel be racing against in 1993? Bobby Rahal, the 1992 Indycar champion, raced in Europe in Formula 2 in 1979 before moving into Indycars in 1982. He won his first PPG Indycar championship in 1986 and successfully defended his title in 1987. In 1992, he formed his own team with Carl Hogan and became the first owner-driver to win the championship since A.J. Foyt in 1975. Brazilian Emerson Fittipaldi won the Formula One World Drivers' Championship in 1972 and 1974. He retired from racing in 1980, but returned 4 years later to race Indycars. In 1989, he won the Indianapolis 500 on the way to becoming the first foreign driver ever to win the IndyCar title. In 1993, Fittipaldi will lead the challenge of the Penske team. Mario Andretti is one of motor racing's all-time great drivers. In a 30-year career, Andretti has won the Formula One World Drivers' title and 4 IndyCar championships. Mario's record of 51 IndyCar race wins puts him second only to A.J. Foyt in the all-time standings. In 1980, Andretti and Mansell were briefly teammates in the Lotus Grand Prix team. The partnership is renewed for 1993. Al Unser Jr. is the son of 4 times Indianapolis 500 winner and multiple IndyCar champion Al Unser Sr., and racing is in his blood. In 1990, Jr. won his first championship, and in 1992, he became the 3rd member of the Unser family to win the Indianapolis 500. In 1993, he continues with Rick Galle's team. Paul Tracy is one of the new generation of drivers likely to make his mark in 1993. Just 25 years old, the Canadian was signed up by the Penske team, but broke a leg in an accident at Michigan in his first race for the team. Recovered for 1992, he deputised for the injured Rick Mears during the second half of the season. Mears' retirement has given Tracy a great opportunity to prove himself in 1993. Scott Goodyear, another Canadian charger, was the discovery of 1992. Although he moved into IndyCars in 1987, it wasn't until 1992, after a move to a competitive team, that Goodyear began to show his worth. He finished second to Al Unser Jr. in the closest finish ever at Indianapolis. The winning margin less than 5/100ths of a second. He's a man to watch this year. Danny Sullivan raced in England in the 1970s and drove for the Tyrrell Formula One team in 1983. In 1985, he became the first driver to win the Indianapolis 500 after spinning. And 3 years later, driving for Penske, he won his first IndyCar title. In 1993, Danny will partner Al Unser Jr. in the Galle's team. Like the Grand Prix Championship, the IndyCar Series is contested over 16 races. The opening race is held on the street circuit at Surfers Paradise near Brisbane on the Gold Coast of Australia, and is the only IndyCar Championship round held outside of North America. The series then returns to America for the first oval race of the year at Phoenix, Arizona, where the Indycars have raced since 1964. 2 weeks later, it's back to the street, this time in Long Beach, California, on the only circuit at which Nigel Mansell will have raced before. The event was held as a Formula One race until 1983. The Indianapolis 500, the biggest motorsport event in the world, is held at the end of May, after a month of practice and qualifying on the world-famous 2.5-mile track. Just 1 week later, the action moves to the 1-mile paved oval at Milwaukee. Next to Indianapolis, this is the oldest event on the championship calendar. The first race was held on the original dirt track oval in 1939. The Detroit Grand Prix is the third race in 3 weekends for the teams. It's also another event that started off as a Formula One championship round before switching to Indycars in 1989. After a 2-week break, the teams convene in Portland, Oregon for the first race of the year on a purpose-built road course, a regular fixture on the schedule since 1984. The transporters then head east for the Cleveland Grand Prix, held on a temporary road course laid out on the runways of the Burke Lakefront Airport. A week later, the cars are in action across the border for the first of 2 visits to Canada. The race on the streets of Toronto was first held in 1986. The 2-mile Michigan Superspeedway hosts the only other 500-mile race in the championship, and in the past has been the scene of some spectacular incidents. Following a week after Michigan, the race on the 1-mile New Hampshire Speedway is the most recent addition to the IndyCar Tour. The inaugural event was held in 1992. The 4-mile road course at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin is the longest track in the series and the most scenic. The next weekend, after a long haul west, the championship continues in Canada with a street race in Vancouver, British Columbia, which was first held in 1990. The 13th round of the championship is held on the Mid-Ohio road course near Lexington. The race has been a regular championship event since 1983. The banked 1-mile track in the Andretti family hometown of Nazareth, Pennsylvania, hosts the final oval race of the year. Nazareth is the fastest of the short oval circuits and has been part of the IndyCar Championship since 1987. The IndyCar World Series reaches its climax on the scenic Laguna Seca road course, which held its first championship race in 1983. After breaking the lap record on the road course at Laguna Seca in California, Nigel and the team returned to the Phoenix Oval. Having worked together for several weeks now, the team and driver are very much in tune.
I mean, I can't see through it. I mean, heck, That's fine. Let's leave it? Yeah, just leave it for now and see how it is. I mean, it's got to be a little bit better, isn't it?
This second Phoenix test will give Nigel his first experience of the 1993 Lola.
Start it up, warm it up. Then we'll know that we're coming out. Ready? Yeah.
The crew roll the car out into the pit lane. Team manager Jim McGee gives the all clear. And Nigel is off. After warming the tyres, Mansell's confidence in the car becomes evident. Within a few laps, he's running on the optimum racing line close to the retaining wall. The stopwatches tell the story. A new lap record of 20.6 seconds.
We're all very impressed with Nigel's adaptation to the ovals here, and we're very, very pleased. Having worked with Emerson and Mario and Mears and a few of the other drivers, Nigel's a special person, and we're all very impressed with his method at which he's approached the ovals.
As Nigel and the team celebrate his success, disaster strikes Al Unser Jr. Help is quickly on hand, but the driver seems to be unharmed.
Fortunately, the driver walked away. He's okay.
Unser climbs out of the wreck with a new appreciation for the strength of the Lola Indycar. The following day, the Newman Haas team prepare for a full race distance run of 200 miles.
All I can say is that 20.6 round here is the fastest ever recorded time in history, and that probably means more to me than the road courses, because road courses I've raced on all my life. But to do that special time round here and on actual hard tyres which we race on, because other people have done a 20.8 round here, but they apparently use a little bit softer compound tyre. I've actually used the tyre which we actually race on, was a little bit harder, so I mean I'm thrilled to bits, and it's actually sinking in today what I actually achieved yesterday. All credit to the Lola chassis, which of course is made in England, and all the people back at Lola, thank you. And of course, Cosworth and Ford for supplying the engine and the power. But of course, the most important part of the package is the crew and the Newman Haas team, which is second to none. My engineer, Peter Gibbons, is certainly an incredible engineer on the IndyCar circuit, and I'm very fortunate to have him as my engineer. Setting up the car is so different. I mean, if anything, it's going to make me a better all-round driver now. I mean, the experience I've had, and as you said, I mean, to go to Firebird, and we sort of reduced the track record there quite a lot, and then go to Laguna Seca, which I think is a thoroughbred race course. I mean, a Formula One Grand Prix could be taken there tomorrow. It's just a fantastic race course to drive on. I mean, the only thing it hasn't got is the pits facilities, but the racetrack to race on is just first class. It's fantastic and very demanding. And then, of course, to come back to the PIR circuit, Phoenix International Raceway here, this is a most awkward oval. It's not a perfect mile oval, and it has some very tricky bits in it. Here I am talking to you, and it's sort of getting up sort of 85, 90 degrees here this afternoon, and we're actually going to go out and do a full race distance now, 200 laps, the first time I'll ever done a full race distance on an oval, and you're about to witness the start of it.
The race test will also include simulated caution periods, when the car will run at reduced speed, and will also give Nigel a taste of pit stops under race conditions.
Coming in.
Run out of fuel.
You ready? Can you make it in? Hey, we got the starter ready? Got it right here.
What's it like to drive around the Phoenix Oval?
It's a rolling start as opposed to a standing start, so we roll by, green flag, start, and literally you have to gun it or put the gas pedal down or go flat out, whatever. And then you come into turn one, which is this one. You try and stay in the middle of the road and come down low and try and go around here as quick as possible. And you're already up to about 170, 175 miles an hour. And then you exit in turn one, hopefully not like someone's done in the wall there, running wide and coming out, and now you're pulling 180. And now you're coming down here, and you're reaching probably upwards of 188, 190 miles an hour. The incredible thing is coming down into turn three, is now you enter this turn totally flat out, without a lift if you're going quick. This corner is very tricky. When you think you come in here without lifting, you just got to hang on now. And as you can see, we're only doing 75 miles an hour. We do another 100 miles an hour on top of this through this turn. As you can see, the back end gets really light there, and then back down the short straight again. There you have it. And if you can do that and average 175 miles an hour around the whole circuit, you just broke the track record, and I'm pleased to say we just did that. Not in this car, but in the race one. Slowing up again. You just got to pay attention and be really careful what you're doing. You're holding onto that camera real hard. And you can see a bit of smoke. Oh dear, car's a bit smelly, isn't it? And you don't really want to do that coming out of turn two. Put the glasses back on now.
Nigel has broken the lap record at each of the 3 circuits he's tested on this year. Indycar's newest recruit looks set to be a major force in the 1993 championship.
Everybody's going to benefit from it. The public, the drivers, the media, the sport in general, the sponsors, and I think IndyCar racers should be feel themselves very, very lucky.
It's very competitive. The cars possibly run closer than, in other forms of racing, and I think with Nigel's ability in traffic and everything, I think it ought to be very exciting for the people in Europe.
I think it'll be very competitive. I'd be right up front and forced to be reckoned with immediately. No reason for not to be.
Oh, I think he's going to do very well. Well, hopefully not too well.
Well, here we have it. We've just concluded a 3-day test at the Phoenix International Raceway, and it's marvellous really. As you know, we've set the new track record at 20.6, which is quite phenomenal. Very excited about it. I hope you've enjoyed the introduction to the IndyCar Series program as much as I've enjoyed making it, and I look forward to catching you down in Australia.